In 1992, the Southern Special Zone echoed with roar of excavators. 5-year-old Kiki, in a faded floral blouse, with a worn canvas bag on back, stood stubbornly at Goo Group Tower entrance. In front of her was a brand new black Rolls-Royce. Glaring in the sunlight, the door opened, and a long leg in a sharp suit stepped out. Gu Jinting was 35. With toughness and danger in his eyes, was the most famous industrial tycoon in the zone. Whose child are you? Gu Jinting frowned. Looking at the girl who resembled him, Kiki looked up and pulled out a worn jade pendant from her clothes. Daddy, Kiki. Before leaving, Mom told me to find you. Gu Jinting let out a cold laugh. His eyes held no warmth, only a businessman's indifference. Little girl, plenty of people look like me. If you want to enter the Gu family without a DNA test, don't even think about stepping onto my stairs. He turned and signaled driver to go. Kiki did not cry. She quietly looked at the car's rear wheel. In her eyes, blood-red mist strands wrapped around the spinning hub. It was deathly energy only a celestial master could see. Daddy, Kiki called out in a clear young voice, not loud, but piercing, there's a vengeful spirit on this car's wheel. If you drive out today, the car will flip. Gu Jinting paused, then looked disgusted. He felt the child was suspicious and ill-intentioned. He slammed the car door shut, and the Rolls-Royce sped down the long street. Gu Jinting sat in the back seat, feeling irritated. That little girl's eyes were too clear enough to unsettle a man hardened by years in the business world. Drive faster, he ordered coldly. The car moved steadily along the wide asphalt road. The special zone in the 90s was lively. However, less than 100 meters after leaving the building, as the Rolls-Royce passed an intersection, something went wrong. Without any warning, the right rear tire blew out. The car lurched to the right, and the driver spun the wheel frantically. But he could not control the runaway steel beast. Amid harsh scraping sounds, the million-dollar luxury car rolled repeatedly on the road and crashed onto its side in the roadside greenbelt. Glass shattered, and Gu Jinting felt dizzy. He struggled out of the car. His suit was torn, and liquid from his forehead blurred his vision. Ignoring the pain, one thought filled his mind. The child was telling the truth. A crowd had gathered around. Gu Jinting shoved through them and turned to stare at the building entrance. That figure was still standing there. The wind lifted her hair. She looked like an all-seeing prophet from 100 yards away. Quietly watching all, his heart was in turmoil. How could a 5-year-old predict it so perfectly? Could there be people in this world whose words become law? Gregory took Kiki back to the Gray family estate, a luxury villa halfway up the mountain. As they entered the hall, wealth hit them. On the leather sofa, a little girl in a lace princess dress was surrounded by several maids. She was Gina Gray. Everyone thought she was Gray family's only daughter. Daddy! Gina screamed and rushed over, but when she saw Kiki, her face changed. Who is this filthy little beggar? Kiki shrank close to Gregory, but her big eyes nervously sized Gina up. From her point of view, Gina's rosy cheeks were covered in black energy. It was the mark of stealing another's luck. Her name is Kiki. She's staying here for now. Gregory spoke stiffly, shaken from the crash. Gina's eyes turned cold. When Gregory went upstairs to change, she rushed at Kiki, reached out her hand and pinched Kiki's arm, hissing under her breath. This is my home. Get out! But Sevens said softly, hands off. Before Gu Jiaojiao's hand could touch Sevens, her body suddenly froze midair like she'd been electrocuted. Then came a sharp crack. Gu Jiaojiao's wrist somehow dislocated by itself, without anyone touching her. Ah! Gu Jiaojiao gave a piercing scream. The maids panicked. None saw what happened. They only knew that the new little girl stood there still, not changing her expression. Hearing a scream, Gu Jinting rushed downstairs. Seeing Gu Jiaojiao's dislocated wrist, his eyes turned suspicious again. It was her! Gu Jiaojiao cried and pointed at Sevens, accusing her. Facing Gu Jinting's questioning stare, Sevens didn't argue. She pointed toward the study door. There stood a pure gold fortune toad, its base set with precious gems. Gu Jinting had bought it to celebrate company going public. Dad, you shouldn't blame me. Sevens spoke softly, childlike, yet with the calm of an elder. Look at that golden toad. It's not bringing you wealth. It's feeding on your life. Guy Stanton snapped coldly. What nonsense. I paid a fortune to have this done by a master. Masters can be frauds. Kiki stepped forward and pointed at the golden toad's mouth. There's a death charm inside. To prove Kiki talked nonsense, Guy Stanton had a crowbar brought and pried open the golden toad's base in front of everyone. As the base came off, the room fell silent. Inside the pure gold lining was a blood-red talisman. On it was a drawing of a savage human head. Even Guy Stanton, who never believed in ghosts or spirits, on seeing that talisman, felt a chill run down his spine, ice shooting to his head. This was the Stanton family study, a restricted place only a few trusted aides could enter. Guy Stanton clenched the talisman, face dark and terrifying. Someone wanted him dead, and that person was right beside him. He lowered his head and looked at the little girl who didn't reach his waist. For the first time, he felt awe he couldn't explain. Late at night, thunder roared outside. Guy Stanton was in the study, finishing the final documents for the Imperial bid. This concerned Stanton Group's next 5 years. Once he signed it, he would become the top figure in real estate in the special district. As he picked up the pen and was about to sign, the study door suddenly burst open. Kiki stood there barefoot, wearing oversized pajamas Gordon had just bought her. Her face looked serious under the light. She held a few copper coins. She was like she was commanding the heavens and earth. Don't sign. Kiki strode and grabbed Gordon's hand. Gordon was annoyed. Kiki, deal worth over $100 million. Stop fooling around and get out. If you sign this, Dad will lose everything. Kiki's eyes were clear and her tone was unmistakable. I just cast a reading. This land is cursed. Disaster is buried beneath it. If you sign today, the Gordon family will fall. Gordon let out a cold. This has already undergone geological surveys. There is no. You're a kid. What do you know about business? Ignoring Kiki's effort to stop him, he forced the pen down. But the moment touched the paper, that custom Parker fountain pen worth thousands suddenly exploded without any warning. Ink splattered over Gordon's face, and the spotless contract was stained pitch black. Gordon froze. His heart skipped a beat. Was it a coincidence? He looked at the broken pen in his hand, then at Kiki's calm expression. The hand that was about to sign pulled back, trembling. Early next morning, shocking news spread through the special zone real estate world. On the very plot Goose Sterling was to sign for. After a night of heavy rain, a massive geological collapse occurred deep underground. The level foundation sank down. A huge crater exposed the shattered rock layers below. Goose Sterling's top rival had rushed to sign for land late last night and paid a huge deposit. Now the land couldn't be developed, and they still faced enormous follow-up costs. Overnight, they lost $500 million. Goose Sterling stood in his office, staring at the ruins outside the window, silent a long time. If he had signed last night, the bankrupt one jumping off a building. Breakfast is ready. Kiki pushed open the door, holding a steaming bun, flour still on his face. Goose Sterling turned and looked at him with mixed emotions. This 5-year-old child had saved his life, but also his business. He used to believe that man could conquer nature, that data and strength were everything. But in front of Kiki, that suddenly seemed so weak. How did you know something was wrong underground? Gordon crouched down, looking the child in the eye for the first time. Kiki took a bite of her bun and answered through a mouthful. The earth has its own energy. The energy there was messed up, like when a person gets sick. Gordon fell silent. Looking at this soft-voiced little bun munching on a bun, his last defenses crumbled. Was she a monster sent by heaven, or a lucky star given to the Gordon family? If she was a lucky star, then the way he had neglected her before was the biggest mistake of his life. To make it up to Kiki, Gordon took her to a high-level business gathering. Inside the banquet hall, the district's elite had gathered. Kiki held Grace's hand, standing among adults in sharp suits. And she looked out of place. Wearing that little yellow duck backpack, she looked around curiously. Mr. Gordon, is this your long-lost daughter? A socialite in a deep V gown walked up, eyeing Kiki with contempt. Pretty face, sure, but manners, she looks like a little beggar. Laughter rippled around them. Covering her mouth, the socialite spoke smugly. Kiki stopped and tilted head. Looking at the socialite's slightly rounded belly, she blinked and said in a clear voice, Auntie, the little baby under your pretty dress is crying. The socialite froze. You're just a kid. What nonsense are you talking? I'm not making it up, Chi-Chi said seriously. The baby says he's not your husband's. Wants to find his real dad. The moment she said that, the banquet hall fell silent enough to hear a pin drop. The socialite's husband was not far away, and hearing it, he walked over with a dark face. Su Chi-Chi. Gu Jinting wanted to stop her, but realized the socialite was panicked. You little bastard, how dare you slander me? The socialite screamed, but her darting eyes and trembling hands had given everything away. A high society scandal exploded and the mockery of Chi-Chi turned into judgment of the socialite. Watching, Gu Jinting's lips curled up. His daughter did not need his protection. After that party, Chi-Chi's title of Little Miracle Girl spread through the wealthy circles of the special district. As long as Chi-Chi spoke, things always came true. That morning, Gu Jinting was about to go discuss a business deal. Chi-Chi casually said, Dad will meet someone in red today. He'll give Dad a big gift. On the road, Gordon ran into a merchant in red with a broken-down car and gave him a hand. And that man was an overseas tycoon with multinational trade connections. He immediately signed a letter of intent for a deal. Gordon was convinced. He was no longer the cold-faced boss. He crazily hauled things home. Mr. Gordon, these are the latest French princess dresses, 12 in total. The secretary wiped sweat and looked at piles of shopping bags in the office. And this, imported organic formula from New Zealand. Let's order 100. Gordon waved his hand grandly without even blinking. Kiki looked at the room full of pink lace and let out a helpless sigh. Dad, I can't wear so much. It's fine. Change 3 outfits a day. Daughter deserves the best. Gordon rubbed Kiki's head. Signs of this iron-fisted tycoon turning into a doting dad were unstoppable. But then Kiki pointed to a corner of the garden outside the window and said softly, Dad, the flowers there have bloomed, but someone wants to bury bones beneath them. Gordon's gaze turned icy. Giselle often played there. In this house, venom he could not see still lurked in the shadows. By the garden pond, the sunlight perfect. Giselle looked at Kiki in the expensive princess dress, so jealous she was losing her mind. Before Gordon Sterling came back, she was the only little princess in the house. Hey, bastard, go get my ball. Gia Sterling pointed at the steep stone ledge by the pond, a vicious glint flashing in her eyes. Kiki stopped, turned, and looked quietly. In Kiki's eyes, the pond behind Gia Sterling was dark and eerie, with a faint sense of wanting to drag someone under. Did your mommy teach you to push people? Kiki didn't move, voice young but cold. Gia Sterling had been called out. Humiliated and furious, she charged forward and shoved both hands toward Kiki's back with all her strength, wanting to send this eyesore straight into the bottomless pond. Just as Gia Sterling's hands neared Kiki, Kiki suddenly spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried a strange force. Fall back. Then something bizarre happened. Gia Sterling's hands were pushing forward, but her body was yanked backward by some invisible force. She lost balance. Her feet slipped, and in a clumsy pose, she toppled backward with a splash. Gia Sterling went in headfirst. She fell into the pond, water splashing everywhere. Gordon Sterling happened to see it from the second-floor balcony. He saw the vicious look on Gloria Sterling's face when she pushed her, and he didn't miss the strange reversal either. For the first time, the daughter he had raised for 4 years was cruel. He hurried downstairs and ignored Gloria Sterling struggling in the water. Instead, he went over and pulled Kiki into his. That day, Gordon Sterling and Kiki's DNA test results came out. Gordon canceled all his meetings and went to the private hospital to get the report. The past few days, despite doting on Kiki, that cold, cutting voice of reason still demanded proof. In the hospital corridor, Kiki sat quietly on a bench, wearing a slightly worn little yellow duck backpack. Gordon Sterling came out holding. His face looked awful. He opened the report, and on the final line, in red letters, said, "Not biologically related." How could this be? Gordon Sterling's hand trembled. Those coincidences, that feeling of blood ties, was it all fake? Gloria Sterling and the nanny rushed to the hospital. After seeing the report, the nanny screamed, "Mr. Sterling, this bastard is here to scam us. He was sent by that factory girl to hurt Lily." Gordon stared hard at Kiki. There was struggle and pain in his eyes. Kiki stood and brushed dust off her skirt. He didn't cry or cause a scene. He just looked at the paper in Gordon's hand and gave a faint smile. "Dad, the ink on that paper isn't even dry, but the name on it has already changed." Kiki pointed at the trash can. "The real report is in there, but you don't believe me anymore." She slung her backpack over a shoulder and walked out without looking back. "If you don't believe me, I'll leave, and I'll take the Goof family's luck with me." As 17 walked out of the hospital, the sky turned dark with storm clouds. Gordon looked at the figure, and a sharp pain hit his heart. He felt something was wrong with the report. He lowered his head and looked at the trash can. Among the pile of waste paper, there seemed to be a flash. In the special district, rain came suddenly. Big drops slammed onto the asphalt, sending up clouds of white mist. Gordon sat in a black sedan, clutching the real report he dug from the trash. The bribed doctor had already confessed. Lily's nanny had paid him off to switch the test results. Gordon's heart felt sliced by a dull blade. He actually drove his own daughter out into the pouring rain. "Move! Search every overpass and every station." Gideon Sterling roared to the bodyguard, voice full of regret. Meanwhile, under an awning in the old district of the special zone, Kiki sat calmly on a tiny stool. In front of her was a chipped porcelain bowl holding a shiny, greasy drumstick. The roast meat vendor beside her gave her it. "Just a moment ago." Kiki pointed at the vendor's forehead and said that at noon he would lose money to dodge disaster. The vendor didn't believe her, but less than 15 minutes later, the sign from the loft fell and smashed onto the spot where he usually sat. But because he had gone to get Kiki water, he escaped. At this moment, Kiki was pointing and gesturing at a mysterious old man in a wheelchair, snow-white hair, and sharp eyes. But in front of Kiki he had put away his edge. "Grandpa, your leg isn't crippled. The earth energy you is sealed up." Kiki took a bite of the drumstick, then mumbled as she pointed at his knee, "You need to head north and stay 3 days where there's an old locust tree. Then your leg will heal on its own." The old man's eyes lit up, and he was about to ask more when Gideon Sterling rushed out of the car. His dress shoes splashed in puddles, covering him in mud, but he didn't notice. The instant he saw Kiki, his eyes turned red, and he rushed forward in quick steps, trying to pull the tiny figure into his arms. "Kiki, Kiki, I was wrong. Come home with Daddy." Before he got close, the old man in the wheelchair snorted coldly. Black-suited bodyguards behind him stepped forward and stopped Gus Trenton 3 paces away. Their movements were sharp and precise. Their presence was overpowering enough that Gus Trenton felt long-forgotten pressure. The old man looked up and said coldly, "So you're the young man from the Goof family? If you don't trust this child, why bring her back? This girl saved my life. Now, she's my Quinn family granddaughter." Only then did Gus Trenton clearly see the old man's face and suck in a sharp breath. This was Elder Quinn, the retired chief from the capital, an influential figure even in the special district. "Elder Quinn, she's my biological daughter." Gus Trenton was sweating, almost dropping to his knees. Elder Quinn ignored him and turned to Kiki with a smile. "Little one, come back to the capital with me. Whatever you want, Grandpa will give you." Kiki brushed crumbs off her hands and slowly put on her little yellow duck backpack. Gus Trenton held his breath, arms stretched in hope, but Kiki gave him a calm glance. Then she turned away and plopped down on the stone stool beside Elder Quinn. with no intention of getting into the car. Gus Trenton stood in the rain, his heart sinking into an ice pit, his face full of helpless confusion. After much pleading, and with teasing from Elder Quinn, Gus Trenton finally brought Kiki back to the Gu family villa. To show his sincerity, Gu Jinting had all the bodyguards and servants line up in 2 rows at the door. 24 men in black lowered their heads and said in unison, "We're sorry, miss." Held in Gu Jinting's arms, Chi-Chi was stiff and awkward, as if terrified of losing his daughter again. Chi-Chi didn't look smug. Her clear, wide eyes swept the guards, then stopped on the head guard, one of Gu Jinting's most trusted men. He stood full of shame. Chi-Chi pointed at him and said in her baby voice, "Uncle, your house is on fire. Go put it out." The head guard froze, gave a smile. "You must be joking, Mississippi. I checked the water and power before I..." Those around them also saw it as a child's random remark. Even though Gu Jinting knew Chi-Chi had a gift, he didn't think much of that. He was about to take Chi-Chi inside for a hot bath. But then, the head guard's phone rang shrilly. It was a bulky 90s cell phone, loud as hell. He picked up, and within seconds his face went deathly pale. The phone dropped on the lawn with a smack. "It's really on fire. It really is." The head guard stumbled back to Gu Jinting and stammered. "My neighbor called," said. The kitchen gas line exploded. Every guard looked at Chi-Chi differently now. This wasn't some cute little kid. He's a walking judge on Earth. To cheer Kiki up, Gordon took her to inspect the new mining site the Gordon Group opened on the outskirts of town. Mining sites in the 90s were rough and dusty. "Mr. Gordon, the experts have tested for half a month. This area has almost no gold. And if we keep digging, we'll lose money." The site manager wiped sweat off his forehead, defeated. Gordon frowned. He had poured a fortune on this mining land. If there was no gold, the Gordon Group's cash flow would be in trouble. The experts shook their heads with advanced equipment, saying the geological structure was wrong. Kiki was wearing a camouflage skirt and holding a popsicle, walking by the pit. She glanced toward what the experts had declared a dead pit. The place was shrouded in dark energy, so there was no luck there. "Not here, over there." Kiki pointed at a weed-covered rocky hill in the distance that looked worthless. The manager looked uneasy. "Miss, there isn't even a basic mineral layer there. The experts said it's impossible." "It's there, so dig there." Kiki stopped. The power of her words made her voice carry unquestionable force. "Dig 3 meters, and the gold will come out." Gordon waved for the excavator to head over, even though no one believed her. But they had no choice. As the machines roared and the earth was torn open, when they dug nearly 10 feet down, a flash of gold sparkled in the sun. "Gold! It's high-grade ore," the man in charge screamed as he jumped into the pit. The experts were stunned. With one scoop, Gideon's fortune was worth more than double. But before the cheers could fade, something went wrong. Near where the gold was found, at a collapsed opening, a sudden dull thud. An old miner had half his body pinned under falling earth. People around him scrambled to save him, but he'd lost too much blood. He was on the verge of dying. Kiki pushed through the crowd, went over, then crouched beside the old miner. She gently touched the center of his forehead and softly said, "Stay alive." The old miner, barely breathing and near death, suddenly coughed hard, then slowly opened eyes. This miraculous scene pushed everyone's awe for Gideon's little miracle girl daughter to its limit. When the old miner got a clear look at Kiki's face, he was so weak that his gaze was unfocused, but the moment he saw the jade pendant on her chest, body went rigid. That's Madame Susan's jade pendant," the old miner said hoarsely, grabbing Gideon's pant leg. "Mr. Gordon, Madame Susan's disappearance in the mountains back then, it wasn't an accident. I saw it." Gideon's pupils shrank violently. Susan had mysteriously vanished during an expedition years ago. It was deepest pain in his heart. He thought it was an accidental fall off the cliff, but the miner's words struck like thunder. "Who did it?" Gu Jinting's voice turned cold, murderous. The miner spat blood and pointed into the distance with difficulty. In the capital, there was a man in a black sedan. "Who took Madame away?" Chi-Chi sat on a nearby rock, her eyes too deep for a 5-year-old. A crack in the truth had quietly opened deep in the mountains. When they got back to the villa, Gu Jinting had hired new maids. Among the row of servants in neat uniforms, Chui Tsuehua caught Chi-Chi's attention. Honest, hardworking, and fast-moving, but when Chi-Chi got close to her, she instinctively pinched her nose. "Mr. Gu, here's the maid Auntie Zhang recommended. She says she's very good." The housekeeper recommended her. Gu Jinting looked into the miner's lead, so he nodded casually. Gu Jiaojiao ran over and grabbed Chui Tsuehua's hand, acting close to her, but a faint smug look flashed through her eyes. With her hands behind her back, Chi-Chi circled Chui Tsuehua twice. To Chi-Chi, Chui Tsuehua looked rosy and healthy, yet a rotten, deathly aura wrapped around her. "You smell like dead rats." "Stinks." Chi-Chi looked up expressionlessly, childish voice sweet but full of disgust. Cora Choi went pale and awkwardly wiped her hands on her apron. "You're joking, Mississippi. I took a bath before coming." Grace Gu jumped in to accuse her. "Susie Sue, that's rude. She's new. Why are you picking on her?" Though Victor Gu felt Susie wouldn't say that, he didn't notice anything unusual about Cora Choi, so he told her to do her job well. Watching Cora Choi walk away, Susie gave a cold smile. This Cora Choi was Grace Gu's biological mother, disguised by plastic surgery and sneaking in. The dark aura around her was almost dripping. It was a deadly trap aimed at the Gu family. She felt the poisonous scheme brewing in the kitchen, smoke and fire. Next morning, Cora Choi walked into the dining room carrying a steaming bowl of pumpkin porridge, looking gentle. "Miss, I made this especially for you. I added snow frog. It's nourishing." Cora Choi set the bowl in front of Susie, her eyes hiding a deep urgency. Susie held a wooden spoon and stirred the porridge. Through spirit sight, wisps of green smoke floated in the bowl. It was a slow-acting lethal poison. Something that wouldn't show up in tests immediately, yet could destroy a person's body and soul. Victor Gu sat at the head of the table reading the paper, while Grace watching Susie from the corner of her eye. Susie stopped stirring, looked up at Cora Choi, and gave a sweet smile. "Auntie, you've taken care of me. You should have the first sip." Choi Suelon's smile froze as she declined. "How could I? This was specially made for the young miss. Drink this bowl of porridge." Chi-Chi's tone turned cold. That crushing force in her words hit Choi Suelon like a bolt of lightning. As if involuntarily, Choi Suelon picked up the bowl of porridge and, trembling, gulped down a mouthful. In less than 10 seconds, Choi Suelon grabbed her throat and let out a hoarse scream. Then her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed, foaming at the mouth, body convulsing violently. "Choi Suelon!" Gu Jinting threw down the newspaper, his face changing in. Gu Jiaojiao screamed and hid under the table. Gu Jinting looked from the bowl of porridge to Chi-Chi's calm, almost cold face and understood at once. He immediately signaled for the bodyguards. "Take this woman away and investigate. I want her background check." After Choi Suelon was taken away, the atmosphere in the Gu family villa turned tense. Gu Jinting had planned to take a boat that afternoon to the high seas for an overseas trade meeting with foreign clients, a deal tied to Gu family's next 10 years of future. It was worth billions, even drawing attention of big names in the capital. "Mr. Gu, the boat is ready. Everyone dockside is waiting for you." The secretary glanced at his watch, clearly anxious. Gu Jinting straightened his. Kiki clung to his leg, her face tense. "Dad, you can't go out to sea today. There's only thunder out there." Gavin knelt helplessly. "Kiki, this deal is too important. I have to go. The forecast says it'll stay clear all day." "It'll be fine. The forecast can lie. The signs don't," Kiki said, her eyes serious. "If you go today, you're not coming back." Gavin looked at the stubbornness in his daughter's eyes, remembered the collapsed lot and exploding pen tip, and started to waver. Grant family senior executives called pressuring him, cursing Gavin for letting superstition ruin business. But he gritted his teeth and canceled the trip. Then at midnight, a once-in-a-century thunderstorm broke out without warning over the special zone's waters. Violent winds whipped up huge meter-high waves. The liner Gavin was to take was struck by lightning en route, broke apart, and sank on the spot. No one on board survived. When the news reached the villa, the Grant family executives ready to complain fell silent. The butler and maids looked at Kiki, sitting on the sofa playing with blocks, and their eyes held no longer admiration, but awe. Before the storm's aftermath had even passed, Gavin thoroughly purged the villa. In the hall, everyone stood trembling. Kiki sat on the tall leather sofa, swinging her feet, holding a red apple in her hand. Her gaze swept over the crowd. In the end, all eyes landed on Grace Cole. She was hiding behind the nanny, pale as a sheet, and those once lively eyes were now full of fear. "Dad." Kiki bit her apple, pointed at Grace Cole, and said, "What you raised wasn't a daughter. It was a cuckoo." Grant Cole felt a chill. He always doubted Grace Cole's identity, especially after seeing Cora Quinn's reaction when poisoned. "That's nonsense," the nanny screamed, trying to cover up the truth. "Mr. Cole, Grace was who you carried home from the hospital. The DNA test was switched once, but the later one, that one was changed by Cora Quinn too," Kiki cut in. She pulled a crumpled scratch paper from her backpack and tossed it onto the table. "This is the tracking divination I did. Grace Cole's real father is that driver who was just taken away." The truth was like skin being ripped open, exposing the rot underneath. Grant Cole picked up the paper. Though he couldn't read the symbols, he could still feel the certainty from it. Grace Cole gave out. Her legs buckled, and she collapsed. She looked at Grant Cole's face, dark with rage. Then at Kiki's all-seeing gaze, and she fully understood that her fake princess dream was over. Grant Cole clenched his fists until they shook. For 4 years, he had been raising the child of the people who killed his wife. To put all the rumors to rest, a second DNA test was carried out under the personal supervision of old General Quinn. Every powerful family in the special district was watching results. The hospital was sealed by Gregory Thunder's bodyguards. Not a fly could get in. When the doctor came out holding the report stamped top secret, the hallway fell deathly silent. Gregory Thunder's hands were trembling. He had weathered many storms in business, but never had he felt so suffocated as in this moment. Old General Quinn took the report himself. He glanced at it, then smiled in relief and slapped the paper into Gregory Thunder's chest. "Boy from the Garrison family, you must have done great good in this life to be blessed with a precious daughter." Gregory Thunder looked down at the report. In the conclusion box, it said, "Biological relationship confirmed." This iron-willed man could not hold back. Before everyone, he crouched down, held Kiki, and burst into tears. It was regret, and wild joy too. Doubt and hurt turned into tears bursting through the dam at that moment. "Kiki, Dad will make up for the last 5 years I owe you. Gregory Thunder wiped away his tears, and a commanding aura over the special district flashed in his eyes. He rose and gave his secretary the first order. Go. Inform the media and all powerful families in the special district. 3 days from now, for my one and only biological daughter, we're throwing the grandest family reunion banquet in the city. Chi-Chi hid in Gu Jinting's arms and saw old Commander Qin smiling as he winked at her. She knew. Once the banquet began, her title as the Little Master would shake the entire Southern Special District, and the enemies hiding in the shadows would finally start to panic. The family reunion feast was held at the district's luxurious revolving restaurant. Chi-Chi changed into a custom-made red cloud brocade mini qipao that made her skin look snow white, like a delicate porcelain doll. Gu Jinting stayed by his daughter's side, his eyes full of love. Gu Jiaojiao stood in the corner, clutching folding scissors. She stared at Chi-Chi, surrounded by people like the brightest star in the sky. And jealousy twisted her face. While Gu Jinting stepped away to greet old Commander Qin, Gu Jiaojiao quietly circled behind Chi-Chi and suddenly raised the scissors, trying to shred the expensive dress symbolizing her status. Damn you, bastard! Gu Jiaojiao cursed under her breath. Chi-Chi seemed to have eyes in back of her head. Without turning around, she moved her lips. Scissors turned into a fake snake. As the scissors touched the fabric, Gu Jiaojiao felt a jolt in her hand. And the cold, hard metal scissors softened and warped right in front of everyone, instantly turning into a brightly patterned plastic toy snake with its tongue flicking out as it wrapped around the back of her hand. Ah, a snake! Gu Jiaojiao was terrified and flung her hand around. She knocked over the champagne tower. The crash of shattering glass rang as Gigi Gu fell to the floor, screaming and rolling around in a pathetic mess. The lively banquet fell silent. Trent Gu had turned around. Holding a wine glass, he looked down at Gigi Gu on the floor with icy eyes. There wasn't a trace of pity in that look, as if he were watching a clown. The lights in the banquet hall gathered on stage again as Trent Gu took Kiki Su's hand and walked to the front. The little disturbance hadn't affected his mood at all. It only made him more eager to confirm Kiki Su's place. He cleared his throat and addressed the district celebrities and tycoons, calm and firm. Thank you for witnessing Kiki Su's return to the Gu family. As compensation, I announce today that 90% of my movable and immovable assets under the Gu group will be transferred in full to my daughter, Kiki Su. I will manage them on her behalf until she is of age. The moment he said that, gasps spread across the room. 90%. That meant the business empire Trent Gu built over half a lifetime was almost entirely handed over to this 5-year-old child. No way! The restaurant's back kitchen door suddenly flew open. The maid Flora Chui, Gigi Gu's biological mother, rushed out, her hair in a mess. Knowing her scheme was exposed, she gave up and pointed at Trent Gu as she shrieked, Trent Gu, you heartless bastard who used me and dumped me. You're giving all your money to this little vixen, but have you thought about what Gigi has suffered all these years? Gigi is your flesh and blood. It's the root you left behind in your hometown years ago, and for this bastard you picked up from who knows where, you're going to drive me and my daughter to death? Chui Suelan's revelation hit like a bombshell, sending reporters into a frenzy as cameras clicked non-stop. She cried, as if Gu Jinting had done something shameful and unforgivable. The scene turned chaotic. Faced with Chui Suelan's accusations, Gu Jinting's face darkened. Chi-Chi let out a soft laugh and pulled out 3 copper coins from her backpack, then tossed them onto the table. The coins spun and stopped, and the hexagram became clear in her eyes. Ma'am, people who lie end up with black teeth. Chi-Chi approached Chui Suelan, her voice soft and childlike, yet with a chilling coldness. You say Gu Jiaojiao is Dad's bloodline, but I just cast a hexagram. Her real father is hiding in a truck in the back alley, smoking now. Chi-Chi pointed out the window. Gu Jinting signaled, and the bodyguards rushed out. Soon, they dragged back a cowering driver. When Chui Suelan saw the driver, her face went pale. You shameless adulterers, using my money to raise your bastard, and you dared to curse my wife? Gu Jinting strode off the stage and kicked the driver down. Chi-Chi looked at Chui Suelan and the driver, her gaze icy as she spat out. Since you love each other, you can stay underground together. Dad, the southern mines are short on workers. Send them to dig coal. Make sure they never come back up. Gu Jinting nodded, eyes cold. Take them away. Put them in the deepest shaft. Chui Suehua begged frantically, but the bodyguards dragged her off like a dead dog. Gu Jiaojiao saw her real parents being taken away and collapsed to the ground, scared. She realized then that she wasn't a Gu by blood, and even the last bit of dignity she had was ruined by her birth parents' affair, ground straight into the mud. After Chui Suehua and the driver were taken away, the reunion banquet was nearing the end. Gu Jinting looked at the trembling Gu Jiaojiao with only disgust in his eyes. This child had stolen his daughter's place for 4 years and had tried to kill Chi-Chi. The Gu family does not raise the child of an enemy. Gu Jinting said, throw her out. From today on, she is no longer part of the Gu family. Erase her name from the household register. 2 bodyguards grabbed Gu Jiaojiao and carried her out. Crying and screaming, she slapped their hands, trying to make Gu Jinting turn around. But Gu Jinting gently fixed Chi-Chi's hair. Gu Jiaojiao was thrown beside a trash can on busy street in the special zone. Her lace dress was filthy and torn. With bodyguards, Chi-Chi got into the car. As they passed the trash can, she rolled down the window, pointed at Gu Jiaojiao, and said softly, you've lived on borrowed luck. Now it's gone. From now on, you'll survive by picking through trash. At first, Gu Jiaojiao thought it merely a child's cruel words. A few homeless men stole her shoes, and the next day she found that whenever she tried to get a proper job, something would always stop her, an allergy attack, a bad fall. In 3 days, to stay alive, she did reach out hands that once played the piano and dig through filthy trash cans. Chui Blossom schemed and plotted, hoping her daughter would live like a phoenix forever. But she never expected Chi-Chi's words would seal Gu Jiaojiao's fate in lifelong misery. The two were on the streets, becoming the most frightened drifters in the special district. Gu family villa returned to a brief calm. To make it up to Chi-Chi, Gu Jinting stayed home working all day. But then, an urgent contract from the capital shattered peace. It was a real estate project to develop the new district in the special zone, with a huge price tag and staggering profits. The senior executives of Gu Group urged him to sign, saying it would be the family's stepping stone to the whole country. Gu Jinting sat in his, staring at the red seal on the contract, but still feeling something was off. Dad, there's blood on that paper. Chi-Chi had entered the study unnoticed. She looked at the contract with a deep frown. In her spirit sight, the document was wrapped in deadly evil. This project came from the Zhao family in the capital. They're a real estate powerhouse, Gu Jinting explained. Chi-Chi stepped forward and pressed her hand on the contract. In a cold voice, this isn't a gift. It's a death trap. 3 days after contract is signed, Dad will be taken away, and the Gu family's assets will be swallowed up by the uncle. Gu Jinting felt a chill. He knew Chi-Chi never spoke carelessly. He immediately sent someone to secretly investigate the contract's background. In less than half a day, the secretary came running back and reported that the contract involved a huge financial hole and multiple fraud schemes. The Zhao family wanted the Gu family to take the fall. The mastermind is from the capital. Gu Jinting coldly snorted and tore the contract apart. He looked north, killing intent in his eyes. They saw his base was in the special zone. So they meant to wipe him out across regions. He would remember this debt. After dodging the trap, Gu Jinting grew more obedient to Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi noticed the dark aura between Gu Jinting's brows had not fully faded. Instead, it was spreading toward his life palace. There's something unclean buried under the old house. At dinner, Chi-Chi put down her spoon, face serious. Gu Jinting was surprised. This house was checked before construction. The person who checked it didn't see clearly. Chi-Chi shook her head. Late that night, the Gu family villa was eerily. Gu Jinting slept in the master bedroom when a strange sound awakened him. It was like someone scratching the wooden door with their nails. A crackling buzz rang. He went to check, but the hallway was empty. Bzzzt, bzzzt, the sound came again. This time, it came from deep underground. Gordon Gu followed the sound to the basement door, growing clearer. It felt something deep below was trying to break through the earth, carried by waves of icy wind. Gordon Gu felt a sudden chill in his chest. It was like being watched by a venomous snake. He pushed open the basement door and saw Kiki already standing in the darkest corner. The little girl was holding a compass, its needle spinning wildly. Kiki turned her head, and the moonlight on her face made her look eerily calm. Dad. It's calling you from below. The Gu family's feng shui has been ruined at the root. Kiki pointed at the blue bricks under her. Her voice sounded clear in the night. Early the next morning, Gordon Gu followed Kiki's instructions and brought a construction crew into the basement. Kiki held a small peachwood sword and pointed at a corner sealed with cement. Dig it open. The bodyguard swung sledgehammers and smashed the corner. As plaster fell away, a suffocating musty smell spread. Deep inside the blue bricks, they dug up a clay jar wrapped in black cloth. Inside was a photo of Gordon Gu's birth mother, covered with steel needles and a severed lock of hair. The moment Graham Sterling saw those things, his eyes turned bloodshot. This was a curse. The long-lost 7 arrows of the nailhead spell. His health had been getting worse lately. Who buried this? Graham Sterling asked through clenched teeth. Kiki closed her eyes and counted on her fingers. Then she opened her eyes and looked toward the door. The one behind this has already entered the yard. The Sterling family's second uncle. He came for tea today. As she finished speaking, Graham Sterling's second uncle, he was Graham Sterling's elder in name, and usually kindness itself. Graham, heard they're breaking ground at the old house? I came by to take a look. As Gideon Sterling spoke, he kept glancing toward the basement. What are you looking at? Checking if the thing you buried was found? Graham Sterling hurled the clay jar at Gideon Sterling's feet. It shattered, and steel needles inside scattered across the floor. Gideon Sterling's smile froze, and his face went from red to white, then white to green. This ugly show of brother turning on brother had its mask ripped off so bluntly under Kiki's guidance. Exposed, Gideon Sterling stopped acting. He clapped, and an old man in a gray Taoist robe stepped out from behind him. The old man wore a goatee and held a whisk, looking the master. Graham, since you won't respect your elders, don't blame me for bringing a celestial master to cleanse this family. In a venomous tone, Gustafu said, this is Master Schwanda, a feng shui master from the capital. With him here, that bastard girl won't call the Gustafu tried to bribe Master Schwanda to fight Chi-Chi with magic and cripple the girl who kept ruining his plans. Master Schwanda arrogantly lifted his chin and didn't glance at Chi-Chi. He pulled out yellow paper and got ready to cast a spell. Chi-Chi stood beside Gu Jinting, watching the old man's movements with cold eyes. The moment Master Schwanda was about to light the talisman paper, Chi-Chi gave a soft cough and formed an ancient hand seal with her right hand. Master Schwanda trembled. As if he had sensed terrifying pressure, the hand holding the flame froze. He suddenly turned his head, staring at the childish-looking hand seal in Chi-Chi's small hand. His eyes filled with shock and fear. Is that the 5 Thunder Seal? The old man's legs weakened, and before Gustafu, he dropped to his knees before Chi-Chi with a thud. He threw away his whisk and collapsed to the ground, trembling, crying out, "Great Patriarch above." Disciple was blind. I had no idea the true deity was here. Gustafu was dumb. The great master he had paid a fortune to hire was actually bowing to his niece. Watching this, Gu Jinting's lips curled slightly. Sure enough, she was one no one could ever shake. Seeing the master switch sides, Gustafu ran, but Chi-Chi stood still, her cool voice echoing through the courtyard. "Second uncle, since you're here, then leave your fortune behind." Gregory Gold froze, then sneered. "Susan 7, I have plenty of businesses and shares. What can a kid like you do to me?" 7 didn't get mad. She pointed at Gregory Gold's forehead and said softly, "Second uncle, your luck ends here. People who grab in the end are left with debt." Gregory Gold stormed off. But before he even got home, the cell phone in his hand started ringing wildly. "Boss, bad news. Investment project in Capital City was suddenly seized. Boss, the stock hit limit down. Someone's shorting the Gold family branch. Boss, the overseas mine flooded, and compensation is as high as 300 million. In 1 hour, all Gregory Gold assets blew up. Projects supposed to be guaranteed wins looked cursed, falling apart at the same time. By the next morning, even the mansion Gregory Gold lived in had been taken back by the bank. He rushed back to the family house with clothes in disarray, dropped to his knees before Gregory Thunder, and cried, snot and tears. "Thunder, I would make 7 stop. I'm real second uncle." Gregory Thunder looked coldly at this relative who had once tried to kill him, without a ripple in his heart. He knew this was the power of 7's spoken spirit. His second uncle knelt and begged for mercy, but still couldn't escape the poor, miserable life awaiting. Ever since his second uncle's mess was settled, Gordon Sterling had all but started worshipping his daughter's words. One day, Kiki sat on Gordon Sterling's desk, drawing. She circled a remote corner in the south of the map twice. An undeveloped mudflat in the special zone, with run-down houses and wild weeds. "Dad, buy 2 shabby houses today," Kiki said, pointing at the map. The secretary looked uneasy. "Mr. Sterling, there isn't a road there yet. If we buy that land, it'll only breed mosquitoes." Gordon Sterling didn't glance at the secretary. He pulled out his personal checkbook at once. "Do it. Buy as much as you can." The shareholders accused Gordon Sterling of following a 5-year-old child, calling it a sign the Sterling Group was headed for ruin. Gordon Sterling said nothing and forced the acquisition through. Then 2 months later, the special zone released a new district development plan. That area once called the Mudflat was unexpectedly chosen as the future CBD business district of the special zone. Those 2 shabby houses sat right at the center of the future financial street, and land price shot up 100-fold overnight. The shareholders who once mocked Gordon Sterling wished they could worship Kiki at home as their goddess of wealth. Seeing his daughter's doodle paper, Gordon Sterling was overcome with emotion. His fortune was expanding terrifyingly fast. And the one behind it all was a candy-loving kid. "Chi-Chi, from now on, Daddy's company is yours to run." Gu Jinting held his daughter close, his face proud. But Chi-Chi looked north, her eyes dark and deep. She realized that as the Gu family's fortune grew stronger, those hidden forces far away in the capital could hold back no longer. A fiercer battle was about to begin at the top of power. Outside the Gu family villa in the special zone, several black sedans with capital plates pulled up. A few middle-aged men stepped out, sharply dressed, with arrogance that looked down on everyone. They were from the main Gu family in the capital, to take Gu Jinting back. "Jinting, the main family has spoken. Gone too far in the special zone." The eldest Uncle Gu looked around at the villa's decor, greed flashing in his eyes. "Hand over business here, and bring that little girl back to the capital." Gu Jinting let out a cold laugh. But before he could speak, Chi-Chi at his leg suddenly looked up. In her spirit sight, the wealth palaces above the men's heads were not only dark, but also carried a faint air of theft. Daddy, these uncles smell so bad." Chi-Chi waved her nose in disgust, her baby voice exposing them. "Your money is all over their shadows. They don't want you back. They want to wait till and steal the Gu Group's official seal." The uncles' faces changed, and the man barked, "Where did this little brat come from? How dare you spout nonsense here? Jinting, is this how you raise a child?" Gu Jinting's eyes turned ice cold. He stepped forward and pulled Chi-Chi. A crushing pressure filled the air. "No one tells my daughter what to do. If you can't control your greed, then get back to the Gu family estate. If you lay a hand on the Gu Group again, don't blame me for showing no mercy." In the end, Gu Jinting took Chi-Chi back to the capital. He wasn't going back to honor his ancestors. He was there to settle old scores. At the Gu family estate in the capital, a banquet was held. Hearing that the nouveau riche from the south had returned, the city's elite looked on with amusement in their eyes. However rich Gu Jinting was, he was a rootless upstart, and the 5-year-old daughter he brought back was a little country girl who didn't belong here. "So this is the little miracle worker?" A richly dressed woman let out a laugh, her voice dripping with mockery. "Little girl, the roads in the capital aren't like those in the south. If you talk nonsense here, it'll cost you your luck." Chi-Chi ignored it. Her eyes went to the pale, sallow old master seated in the center. The old man seemed to be forcing himself to stay alert, but gray haze still lingered between his brows. "Grandpa, there's poison in your medicine." Chi-Chi's voice rang out, making everyone freeze. "How dare you!" Second Uncle Gu jumped out to cover it up. The old master is sick from overwork, and dare curse your elder? Is it sickness or not? One candy will tell. Chi-Chi pulled a white pill from her bag. It wasn't candy, but a calm heart pill refined with mystical arts. The pill melted in his mouth, and the old patriarch's stiff body miraculously relaxed. After coughing up a mouthful of black blood, color returned to his face. He opened his eyes and stared hard at the sun beside him, while Chi-Chi quietly stepped back to Gu Shinting's side. News of old Master Gu's miraculous recovery spread through the capital's elite like wildfire. Those elites who mocked Gu Shinting as a nouveau riche suddenly changed their tune. Outside the villa where Gu Shinting lived, a long line formed at daybreak. These people ruled the capital with a wave of the hand, but now each came bearing lavish gifts, hoping to see Chi-Chi. Some wanted wealth, some wanted fame, and more wanted a life-saving fortune reading. Mr. Gu, I've got 3 prime storefronts. I want the young lady to check my luck this year. Mr. Gu, this is a 100-year-old ginseng I brought from overseas. Please ask the young lady to give me advice on my home's feng shui. The secretary looked at the courtyard of luxury cars and ran inside. Gu Shinting sat on the sofa peeling an orange for Chi-Chi, looking proud. Tell them Chi-Chi's still young. She's not doing anything too strenuous. Chi-Chi hugged baby bottle and looked at the anxious faces outside, swinging her legs, bored. One impatient tycoon tried to force his way in. Even after the bodyguard stopped him, he kept shouting, I'll pay 5 million for one reading. 7-7 took a sip of milk, and her soft, babyish voice floated out. No readings today. Not in the mood. And sir, don't rush to ask about money yet. Your basement's about to flood. You should go home and As soon as she finished speaking, the tycoon's phone rang sharply. In less than half an hour, everyone saw the Bloom family estate differently. 7-7 had become the hottest miracle worker in the capital. That day, Gage Sterling took 7-7 to a cemetery on the capital's outskirts. Carved on the headstone was Susan Grace. She was 7-7's missing mother. Gage Sterling stood before the grave for a long time, eyes full of sorrow. 7-7, bow to your mother. Gage Sterling's voice was rough. I never found her for years. I could only set up a memorial grave here. Standing in front of the headstone, 7-7 didn't kneel. Instead, she touched a crack in the stone with her hand. In spirit sight, the tomb was empty. There was no trace of bones, not even a mark of a soul. Dad, Mom isn't dead. 7-7 turned around, her eyes firm. Gage Sterling froze, and his heart clenched. 7-7, you can't joke about something like this. Back then, your grandfather said that the water was cold, but her life was still warm. 7-7 closed her eyes and counted on her fingers. A dark, damp scene appeared in her mind. I figured out Mom is trapped in a windowless room. There are many books there, and a strong smell of herbs. Chi-Chi pointed north of the capital. She's there, not far from us. Someone locked up her soul, that's why Dad can't sense her. This shocking clue hit Gu Shinting like lightning, cracking open the knot in his heart for years. He clenched his fists so hard, terrifying killing intent radiated from him. If Su-Wan was alive, if someone had imprisoned his wife, then even if it cost him everything, he would turn the capital upside down. Following Chi-Chi's directions, Gu Shinting targeted the prestigious Lin family in the capital. The Lin family built its fortune on medicine and owned a hidden private sanatorium on the city's outskirts. Gu Shinting's convoy arrived in force at the gate of the Lin family estate. The head of the Lin family came out with his bodyguards and said harshly, Gu Shinting, you may rule the South, but how dare you come to the capital and cause trouble? The Lin family's gate isn't for you to trample. Cut the crap. Hand over Su-Wan. Gu Shinting's eyes were steely. The Lin family head's face stiffened, then he sneered, Su-Wan? Who's that? I've never heard. Don't think you can bully honest people just because your daughter knows a little fortune-telling. Chi-Chi stepped out of the car, holding a small compass. The compass needle was spinning, pointing at the rockery behind the Lin family gate. She looked at the Lin head and said softly, Mister, when you lie. My eyebrows twitching non-stop. My mom is right behind that wall, crying out. Nonsense, roared Master Lin. Gu Shinting had no patience for crap. He gave a cold order, smash it. At his command, the Gu family's SUV roared to life and slammed into the Lin family's redwood gate they bragged had stood for 100 years. With a thunderous crash, splinters flew. The grand gate was smashed instantly. Master Lin collapsed to the ground, staring as the demon-like man stormed into his courtyard. His face turning pale, Gu Shinting charged into the inner court. The Lin family guards closed in, but none of them dared make a move. Master Lin scrambled up from the ground and screamed, Gu Shinting, you're challenging the capital circle's bottom line. I'll see to it you never walk out of this gate. Chi-Chi stood by the wreckage, looking at the beam of the Lin family mansion. Around that thick crossbeam coiled countless grudges, the curse from the Lin family's years of dirty money. Daddy. This house is crying. Doesn't want to guard bad people anymore. Chi-Chi looked up. Her words rippled through the air. Today, the Lin family's main beam will break. As soon as she finished speaking, a bolt of lightning tore across the calm sky, then a loud crack followed. And the main beam of the Lin family's century-old mansion's central hall snapped in half without any outside force, without the slightest warning. Bricks shattered and dust billowed everywhere. With a crash, half of the Lin family's old mansion collapsed. The head of the Lin family watched his ancestral home be destroyed by a single sentence from a 5-year-old child. He was terrified and dropped to the ground, too weak to run. I told you, what goes around comes around. Gu Shinting crossed the rubble and stopped before him, looking down. Where is Su-Wan? The overwhelming fear finally broke the head of the Lin family. Shaking, he pointed at the hidden passage under the collapsed main hall. Down there, in the secret room. Please don't let this child. I'm begging you. The bodyguards forced open the secret room door, and a strong herbal smell rushed out. Gu Jinting charged in. On a crude iron bed sat a thin woman. Her hair was messy, her eyes empty, as if she had lost touch with the outside world. A1. Gu Jinting's voice trembled. Su Wan did not respond. She kept tugging at the bedsheet, murmuring unconsciously to herself. For years, the Lin family not only imprisoned her but also used special drugs to numb her nerves, trying to turn her into a living corpse. Chi-Chi stepped forward. She took out a few jade pieces from her school bag. Following a specific pattern, she placed them around Su Wan. As her hands shifted, a cool breeze seemed to drift through the room, slowly drawing away the gray haze gathered at Suyun's brow. Soul return, spirit be still. With a soft command from Sevens, Susan suddenly shuddered, and the haze in her eyes slowly cleared. She raised her head bit by bit. First she saw Gordon, his face covered in tears. Then eyes fell on little Sevens. That pull of blood and family. Snapped Susan's sleeping mind awake. Gordon, her voice was hoarse as she reached out with a trembling hand. And touched Sevens's cheek. Sevens, my Sevens? After 5 years, mother and daughter were reunited. Gordon pulled wife and child into his arms, and their sobs echoed through the broken hall, moving everyone. After Susan was rescued and returned to the villa, she recovered quickly with Sevens's care. That night, she avoided the others and called Gordon and Sevens to her bedside. The Forest family locked me up because they knew the Gould family's ancestor left behind an ancient treasure map. Susan lowered her voice. Wealth tied to that map is enough to shake all of Cathay. Before I disappeared, I risked my life to send it. But I was never sure where it ended up. Gordon frowned. But these years, I've never seen any map. Susan looked at Sevens with a complicated expression. Sevens tilted her head, as if remembering something, then rummaged through her little yellow duck backpack for a while, then pulled out a doodled sheet covered in crayon scribbles. Mommy, is this what you mean? Sevens spread the paper on the table. Gregory Sterling originally thought it was just a child's random doodle, but when he held the paper up to the light, those messy colored lines wove together under the glow into an incredibly complex map of mountains and terrain. On the back of the page, the hidden watermark of the Sterling family's ancestral secret art faintly appeared. It's been in my school bag. Kiki scratched her head, embarrassed. I thought these lines looked like little bugs, so I added color to them. Gregory Sterling and Sylvia exchanged shocked looks. So the top secret treasure map the Lambert family had been searching for over the past 5 years had been carried around by Kiki as doodle paper. Following the map's directions, Gregory Sterling took trusted men to a barren hill on the outskirts of the capital for a seat. Standing on a raised rock, Kiki pointed below. Daddy, dig 3 feet to the left. Mommy's scent is there. As the excavator roared, a massive stone door opened, and the Sterling family's ancient treasure, sealed away for 100 years, saw daylight again. In piles of gold, silver, jade, and priceless artifacts stacked like mountains, long-lost ancient books and treasures sparkled. This is enough to rival a nation's wealth. Gregory Sterling had seen much wealth, but even he took a deep breath. His daughter was not only his lucky star. She was practically the powerful god of fortune the Sterling family had seen in 100 years. But in the end, word got out. Those elder members of the Sterling family, when they heard an immense fortune had been dug up, they shamelessly came with lawyers and bodyguards and closed in. Gu Jinting. These things belong to the Gu family. The main branch should hand them out. Uncle Gu's eyes were full of greed. He reached for a box of gold bars by the cave entrance. You might be rich now, but you still ought to respect your elders, right? Over 100 elders from the capital Gu family, blinded by greed, tried to split up the treasure by force. They had forgotten how they avoided Gu Jinting and his daughter when they fell on hard times. Gu Jinting stood at the cave entrance, eyes sharp as blades, ready to strike. But Chi-Chi stopped him. Looking at those greedy old faces, her eyes held a cold, lofty indifference. She wasn't angry. She dusted off her backpack and said lightly, everything in this cave bears the mark of the ancestors. Chi-Chi stepped forward, her voice crisp. Whoever reaches for it will lose that hand. You little brat, who are you fooling here? Uncle Gu gave a cold laugh. Hiding behind his elder status, he shoved Chi-Chi while the other hand grabbed for a golden qilin by the stone door. The instant his fingertips touched the golden qilin, Uncle Gu suddenly let out a shrill scream. Under everyone's gaze, the right hand used to grab the gold suddenly broke out in purple-red sores, one by one. The itching was unbearable. Blood and pus streamed down. My hand! What happened to my hand? It wasn't just him. Several elders behind him clutched their hands and screamed. The skin on their hands quickly rotted, as if some invisible poison had eaten through it. The bizarre scene shocked everyone. The once arrogant main branch of the Gu family in the capital now looked pale as death. Stumbling and crawling backward, Gu Jinting saw disgraceful elders and coldly declared, from today on, if anyone dares mess with Chi-Chi again, you'll end up worse than this. After that, no one in the capital dared defend the Gu family's residence again. Little immortal Chi-Chi's name rose to the top of the capital. For Chi-Chi to grow up like a normal child, Gu Jinting sent her to an elite private kindergarten in the capital. On her first day, more than a dozen luxury cars lined up at the gate, and Gu Jinting carried Chi-Chi out of the car. Every child here came from a powerful family, but when they saw Chi-Chi, they all felt a strange sense of pressure. Wearing her little yellow duck backpack, Chi-Chi sat at the top of the slide, her tiny face tense. She pointed out the feng shui problems in some kids' homes, and the little rich heirs were instantly won over. At nap time, these spoiled little princes and princesses actually lined up, all scrambling to hand their warm baby bottles to Kiki. Boss, this is the milk from my house. Try it. Big sis, drink mine. I added honey. Kiki looked at these eager little kids and gave a helpless sigh, then took one. When the parents heard, no one thought it was ridiculous. They even warned their kids. You must take care of Miss Grace from the Grant family. She can speak to spirits. From then on, Kiki wasn't just the new kid at kindergarten, she became the little queen of the school. Even the teachers had to speak softly around her. That day during morning exercises, Kiki was swinging on her toes, and when her gaze turned to the side gate of the kindergarten, in her spirit sight, dark shadows flickered, and the school's peaceful aura was torn apart by streaks of gray deathly energy. Dad, bad guys want to take away little saplings today, Kiki whispered to Gideon Grant, who was dropping her off at school. Gideon Grant's face hardened, and he immediately stationed bodyguards at the key exits. Before long, several thugs disguised as delivery workers broke. The thugs targeted young children of several wealthy families in the main hall. Before they could get close, the Grant family's bodyguards dropped on them like divine soldiers. The parents who came afterward were towering figures in the capital. They looked at their frightened children in their arms, then at Kiki, calmly munching on milk tablets. They all lowered heads in thanks. President Grant, Kiki saved the foundation of our family. The House of Zane will never forget this favor. From now on, is my business too. In half a day, nearly half the capital's power players owed Kiki a huge favor. Grant Sterling looked at his daughter and sighed. Before he could make his big move in business, the Grant Group's network had already expanded rapidly because of what Kiki said. Its value had multiplied several times. Though the Lane family had fallen, a few remaining branches refused to give up. They kidnapped Kiki to blackmail Grant Sterling. At dusk, after school, an unlicensed van sped up in front of Kiki. Several men in black jumped out holding sacks. Kiki stood by the roadside, watching the van charge toward her. There was no panic on her face. Instead, there was something almost divine in her eyes, and pointed at the gray sky. Thunder, come. The sky was instantly swallowed by dark clouds, and then a silver bolt of lightning struck down from the clouds without warning. With an earth-shaking crash, it hit the kidnappers' van dead on. The van caught fire and started smoking. The kidnappers never reached Kiki before the violent blast knocked them to the ground, unable to move. It happened in broad daylight, and every passerby and parent nearby was stunned. Soon, this incident spread like wildfire through the capital's top circles. Even newspapers hinted at it. At dinner tables, whispered, "Don't mess with that little girl from the Gu family. She's got the emperor's word in her mouth. A little fairy who can call down thunder." But the capital's business world was far from calm. Bar Sale Group, an overseas company, was heavily shorting Gu corporations. They sought to join forces with several rivals and drag Gujinting down. At the press conference, they openly claimed they would buy up all the Gu family's businesses within a month. Gujinting sat in office, frowning at green lines on the computer screen. Chi-Chi walked in holding a box of white rabbit milk candy, looked at company logo flashing on the screen, and wrinkled her nose. These uncles are so noisy. They keep trying to steal our candy. Chi-Chi put a milk candy into her mouth and casually said, "That company goes under tomorrow." Gujinting thought it was just his daughter's comfort for him, but early the next morning, a world-shaking financial crisis broke out. The overseas stock market crashed in an instant, and Far Sale Group, because its leverage was too high, became insolvent overnight and was ordered by authorities into bankruptcy liquidation. The capital's business world fell into chaos. Many companies were crushed. Only the Gu family, warned by Chi-Chi, moved their assets into physical gold vaults and became the sole survivor. After the battle, no one could shake Gujinting's position. The wealth in his hands was long enough to rival a nation. Old Chief Quinton has looked dark lately, so Gordon Sterling took Kiki to visit the Quinn family estate. When Kiki walked in, she saw a thick, blood-red aura of evil around Old Master Quinn. That was a sign of great danger. "Grandpa, this is for you." Kiki took out a charm wrapped in red cloth from her pocket. An ancient pattern was drawn on the charm paper. It was a safety talisman Kiki stayed up late making. Old Master Quinn burst out laughing and tucked it into his chest pocket. That Old Master Quinn was invited to a private gathering. As his motorcade passed a corner, danger hidden in the shadows struck. A speeding shadow flashed by, followed by a faint metallic clang. At the critical moment, the talisman in Old Master Quinn's pocket suddenly burst into flames, giving off a golden light. The golden light blocked the unknown force, and Old Master Quinn was unharmed, but the talisman became ash. When word got out, the noble families across the capital were shaken as never before. Old Master Quinn came personally and bowed to Kiki in thanks, saying the talisman saved his life. From then on, the Sterling family was not only wealthy and powerful, but also had the backing of the mighty Quinn family, firmly taking the top spot in the capital. Meanwhile, the old-established Chandler family, a real estate giant in the capital, had been plagued by strange events at their ancestral home. The younger generation, after kneeling outside the Sterling residence for 3 days, the head of the Chandler family finally invited Kiki over. When Kiki arrived at the Chandler garden, she pointed at a dried-up, "There's a stone underneath that doesn't belong here. Move it." Master Chin sent people down the well, and they dug up a black stone with strange scratches at the bottom. It was a suppressing curse planted by enemies. The moment the black stone appeared, Master Chen's grandson's fever broke, and he woke up at once. He offered 20% of the Chen Group's shares. Chi-Chi only gave a slight nod, then turned to Gu Xinting and said, "Dad. With the money, we can buy more milk." Gu Xinting watched his daughter casually avert a disaster that could destroy a wealthy family, and his heart melted. As he expanded business empire, whenever he ran into troublesome land deals or difficult partners, he asked Chi-Chi's opinion first. Under Chi-Chi's prophetic words, good people came and crooked businessmen were driven off. Soon, the Gu Group's reach covered every core industry in the capital, and no one could come close. That day, Suwon discovered one of the Su family's ancestral bronze tripods was missing during the chaos years ago. It wasn't just a valuable antique, but also the anchor of the Su family's feng shui. Gu Xinting had the city searched, but found nothing. Chi-Chi closed her eyes and tapped her fingers on the table. A moment later, she pointed to a black market stall on the east side. Behind that pile of junk there, Gu Xinting rushed over with his bodyguards. The black market owner had intended to, but when Gu Xinting's gaze swept over him like a blade, and Chi-Chi casually said as she walked in, "Everything in this room is borrowed." The boss was so scared the antiques he'd gotten illegally started cracking one by one. Terrified, he quickly pulled that bronze cauldron out of a hidden compartment. Seeing her family heirloom returned, Suwon hugged Chi-Chi in excitement. The day the cauldron was put back in place, over a dozen magpies circled above the Gu family villa. That was a sign of good fortune. Gu Xinting realized whatever Chi-Chi wanted, it was as if everything was scrambling to appear right in front of her. As her father, he had instead become his daughter's errand boy, carrying her school bag and buying her milk candy, and he even felt on. A Gu Group trade caravan was to transport precious medicinal herbs across the southwestern border. They were key supplies to solve the crisis at the Gu family's pharmaceutical. Local weather was unpredictable, and rumors of landslides were constant. Before the caravan set out, Gu Xinting asked Chi-Chi for guidance. Looking at the clouds outside the wind, she said in her sweet voice, "The road won't break, and heaven is watching. There'll be heavy rain today, but rain will wash the dust away. You must cross Black Horse Ridge." Although the caravan leader was puzzled, Gu Xinting strictly ordered them to pass on time. Sure enough, a torrential rain came that day. Mudslides were roaring all around them, yet when the caravan passed Black Horse Ridge, the dark clouds suddenly split open, and a beam of sunlight shone straight down. Less than 10 minutes after they got through, the mountain ridge behind them collapsed with a thunderous crash. The caravan seized the market. It let the Gu family's pharmaceutical business corner the rare medicinal herb market in one move. Looking at the good news telegram in his hand, Gregory Quinn finally understood having a little master at home meant endless. He was no longer fighting alone in business. Every prophetic word from Sophie became his strongest trump card in expanding his empire. The Quinn family pharmaceutical biz soon became famous nationwide. But some elder relatives in the Quinn family, shocked by Gregory Quinn's wealth, secretly planted several ill-intentioned people into the core of the Quinn group. They were well disguised. Even professional investigators found nothing suspicious. At a senior financial meeting, Sophie insisted on sitting beside Gregory Quinn. She supped on a lollipop, looking over several executives, then suddenly pointed at the vice president looking most honest. "Mr. The pen in left pocket isn't for writing. It's recording." The vice president turned deathly pale, hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the full. Gregory Quinn ordered a search, and they found a tiny recording device. Then Sophie turned to another woman. "Ma'am, your bank book had 500,000 more in it. You got that by selling company secrets." The woman collapsed immediately, crying and begging for mercy. Gregory Quinn's eyes went icy as he threw them out. After that, everyone in the Quinn group fell in line, and no one dared have ulterior motives again. In the capital, Gregory Quinn's name stood for more than wealth. It stood for authority no one could deceive. By the end of 1992, Gregory Quinn's business empire spanned real estate, mining, pharmaceuticals, and import-export. He became the richest man in the capital. The Gu family's mansion was packed with guests daily, but the rule was clear: seeing President Gu was easy, seeing Kiki was hard. Kiki became the key figure in the inner circle of the capital's top families. Whenever a major decision came up, the big shots would have someone sound Kiki out first. Gu Xinting realized he no longer needed to look for someone to lean on, because in the capital, he had already become the biggest backer in everyone else's eyes. That night, the Gu family held an annual gala. Gu Xinting stood on stage holding Kiki, looking out at the lights and guests. Susan stood beside him, gentle and graceful. The Gu family was never this complete. "Kiki, do you like who Daddy is now?" Gu Xinting asked. Kiki looked at the dark energy between Daddy's brows, long gone now, replaced by a rich royal purple aura of supreme wealth, and broke into a smile. "I do. Daddy is the most handsome now." Kiki kissed Daddy on cheek. Gu Xinting felt his spirit soar. He knew this was only the beginning of the Gu family's glory, and this little darling in his arms would lead them to an even greater peak. In the capital's old Gu family estate, the air was thick with medicine. Old Master Gu lay on a rosewood bed, his breathing very faint. This old man, ruler of the Gu family for decades, with trembling hands, pulled out a will prepared long ago from beneath his pillow. His gaze passed over the children and grandchildren kneeling around his gaze fell on Kiki at the front. "Zane, I've wronged you and your daughter all my life," the old master said hoarsely. "This will. I'm leaving the Gu family's century-old legacy to Kiki. Only she can keep the Gu family's fortune from fading." Everyone in the room changed color at once. The air was filled with stifled gasps. The Gu family's empire worth tens of billions was actually going to a 5-year-old girl? How could the uncles who fought for it half their lives accept that? Zane Gu stood up straight and didn't glance at the document that could drive the whole capital wild. He held Kiki's little hand, his tone calm but firm beyond question. Old master, I don't need anything from the Goof family. My daughter's name and wealth need no worldly things to prove her worth. I only want her happy and free from trouble. Old Master Goof froze, as if he never expected anyone to refuse temptation. Kiki tilted her head, took a sip of yogurt, and muttered, Grandpa, your houses and companies are too heavy. Dad, I don't want them. I want to eat milk candy every day and be a happy couch potato. As the Goof family stirred over the inheritance, an uninvited guest entered the villa. He wore a black robe, his face thin and sharp. But his eyes had an eerie glow. He was the mystic Master Mo Yun, lurking in the capital for a long time, the hidden mastermind who coveted the Goof family's fortune. Mo Yun looked at Kiki. His eyes gleamed with greed. Little girl, a power that makes words law should never be wasted on a child like you. Why not hand it over to me? I'll make sure you live in wealth and comfort for the rest of your life. As he spoke, he pulled a black ancient mirror from his robe. A dark beam shot at Celeste. Celeste felt a tight pain in her chest. The power she could use so freely suddenly felt trapped in mud. And it started pouring out of her body. Celeste! Gordon Sterling lunged forward, but he was only a mortal. And when he approached, an invisible force knocked him back. Morrow Cloud sneered. This is the Soul Lock Array. No one can save her. Celeste, a power like yours defies the natural order. Today is your calamity. Celeste's face turned deathly pale, and the golden light in her eyes flickered. The violent draining of her power triggered a spiritual backlash inside her. Her body felt like it was burning, and she could not speak. Gordon Sterling's eyes were bloodshot. He knew nothing of magic, but he threw himself forward, trying to block that eerie mirror with his body, and even coughing up blood from the impact, he refused to back down. Morrow Cloud's laughter echoed through the villa as the ghostly light from the black mirror grew stronger. Gordon Sterling was slammed into a corner. But he struggled up again. In those steadfast eyes was only resolve. He charged at Morrow Cloud and locked his arms around his arm with his own, trying to stop the ritual. Get lost, you mortal fool! Mo Yun roared and slammed a palm into Gu Jinting's chest. At that critical moment, seeing her father covered in blood yet still shielding her, Chi-Chi's golden light burst out completely. The power draining suddenly surged back like a waking golden dragon. The blood bond between father and daughter triggered an ancient pact in that instant. Dad. Chi-Chi's voice was no longer childlike, but carried a majesty that crossed time. She raised one finger and pointed at the black mirror. Mo Yun was shocked his soul-locking formation was cracking apart inch by inch. Chi-Chi looked at him, her gaze cold as if looking down at an ant. Born human, with a wicked heart. Not worthy of the sacred arts. Chi-Chi, and her words turned into a golden ripple that swept through the hall instantly. Mo Yun felt a sharp pop in his core. And the 50 years of cultivation, along with all the spiritual energy he had stolen, vanished in a single moment. The black mirror shattered into dust. Mo Yun collapsed like a deflated balloon. His hair turned white, and his sharp features gave way to the wrinkles of old age. He had become an ordinary old man, without strength to stand. Mo Yun lay on the ground, staring at Chi-Chi's godlike eyes. A raspy laugh escaped him. He knew he was doomed, and his voice carried the madness of one who had seen through life and death. Gabriel, what do you think you picked up? Morgan gasped for breath. Sophia was never an ordinary time traveler. She's the guardian deity your stone family worshipped for 1,000 years. Your family's fortune was running out, so she turned back time and was born into your bloodline. When he said it, everyone in the villa was stunned. Gabriel froze, then looked down at Sophia in his arms as she slowly returned to her soft, childlike self. His feelings were too tangled to name. So it wasn't just him protecting his daughter, this baby had always been the Stone family's savior. No wonder, on the day she was born, even the withered trees in district bloomed. Susan murmured, her eyes full of tenderness. Sophia blinked, as if those memories weren't clear to her. She wrapped her arms around Gabriel's neck and said in a sweet voice, Daddy. I don't know what guardian deity means. I just want to stay with you and Mommy forever. Amid the curses, Morgan passed out. Gabriel took a deep breath. He didn't care about Sophia's past life. He only knew she was his daughter. He held the tiny life tighter, and at that moment, a blessed glow appeared above the Stone family villa. With the truth out, the last dark cloud over the Stone family completely disappeared. To keep 77 with him forever, so his daughter would never face the mystic world's malice alone again, Gordon made a decision that stunned all of Capital City. He was going to study the occult. The business tycoon who usually called the shots and signed billion-dollar deals now sat on a tiny stool in the study, looking utterly miserable. Before him were stacks of yellow paper and cinnabar, and in his hand was a calligraphy brush too delicate for him. Dad. This stroke needs a little curve, or it won't keep the ghosts down. 77 sat beside him on a high chair, pointing things out like a tiny teacher. Gordon was drenched with sweat. Those hands that had held a gun and signed huge deals were now trembling over drawing a simple protection talisman. Susan entered with a plate of fruit and had to laugh. Gordon, at this rate, cinnabar's gonna dry before you finish that talisman. Don't laugh. I'm doing this to be part of daughter's world, Gordon replied seriously, then sighed after messing up a dot. And so, A strange scene appeared in the villa. Gordon, the richest man in the special district and a top figure in capital city, had become Little Fairy 77's talisman drawing. Anything 77 needed for her rituals, he handled. Even though the talismans he drew were ugly, with 77's spiritual power added in, they became life-saving treasures in their circle. This absurdly funny routine turned into the warmest time in the Gordon household. Late autumn in the capital, the wind cut like a knife. At the gate of the Gu family's villa, a ragged little beggar huddled in a tree's shadow, clutching a torn plastic bag. It was Gigi Gu. Since being thrown out of the Gu family and Lucky 7's spirit words ruined her fortune, she and her mother, Flora Chui, had fallen into street life. Flora Chui had gone missing in an accident, leaving Gigi Gu alone to pick through trash in the capital's alleys. Then a roar came from the distance. A helicopter landed on the villa's lawn. The cabin door opened, and Lucky 7, wearing a custom luxury cape, was carried off the helicopter by Victor Gu. Bodyguards in black suits bowed and scraped just to escort the young miss to buy her favorite milk candy. Gigi Gu stared at the dazzling lights, stared at Lucky 7, surrounded like the brightest star, every strand of hair radiating nobility. Then looked at her own hands, covered in frostbite and dirt. That crushing drop from the clouds into hell shattered the last bit of her will to live. She thought of bullying Lucky 7, scheming to take everything that belonged to the Gu family. Turns out, some things can't be stolen. A miserable laugh cry escaped her from the corner on that freezing night. She closed her eyes. Evil gets what it deserves. Gu Jiaoqiao's fake glory ended in this bleak autumn wind. At the gate of the Gu family's villa in the capital, an astonishing scene, more than 100 neatly dressed elders of the Gu clan. Now kneeling on the blue brick ground, throwing dignity aside, they looked utterly humble, foreheads pressed to the floor. At their head was Elder Uncle Gu, the man who had tried to split up the ancient treasure. Something major happened at the Gu family estate recently. The once thriving feng shui suddenly collapsed for no clear reason, and family businesses, they had consulted every master they found, and the conclusion was the same: the Gu family's fortune should have run dry long ago. Unless they brought back the Gu family's guardian deity, the whole family would fall apart within a month. Jinting, we were wrong, all of us. Elder Uncle Gu cried. Please, let Chi-Chi return to the old house and take a look. Save the younger generation of the Gu family. Gu Jinting stood by a white marble pillar at the villa. He looked at friends and relatives who avoided him like the plague and only cared about money, feeling only a silent sneer. Chi-Chi walked out with a bag on her back. A strawberry candy Gu Jinting had peeled for her was tucked in her mouth. She looked at the crowd outside the gate and wrinkled her nose. In her little voice, she said to Gu Jinting, Daddy, these people are so noisy. Their shadows are full of crying and begging. It sounds awful. Gordon patted her on the head, then looked at the door. You should leave. Whether Kiki goes back or not depends entirely on my mood. And I'm in a very bad mood. Seeing Gordon wouldn't budge, Elder Uncle Gordon used moral guilt to pressure him. Trembling, he held up a family tree and shouted, Gordon, you're part of the Gordon family too. Will you watch ancestors' legacy be ruined? Without the Gordon name, how will Kiki survive in Capital City's social circle? Gordon laughed, his voice carrying a commanding pride that looked down on the whole city. He snapped his fingers, and his secretary handed over several thick files. The Gordon name? Gordon threw the stack of billion-dollar contracts onto the floor like trash. These are the Gordon Group's latest overseas holdings and special zone land deeds. My daughter, Kiki Sutton, now has assets worth 3 Capital City Gordon families. She doesn't need approval, because she stands here, because she is from a rich and powerful family. The place fell silent. Looking at the contracts on the floor, those elders showed unprecedented fear. Only then did they realize that Gordon's wild expansion over the past 6 months had reached the point where he could casually buy out most of Capital City. Kiki ran over to the contracts on the floor, picked one up, folded it into a paper airplane, and threw it at Elder Uncle Gordon. Daddy said, this paper is only good for toys. Mister, go do more good deeds. Luck will come back on its own. Stop coming here. Holding Kiki in his arms, Gideon went inside. The heavy gold-lacquered doors slowly closed, shutting out that greed and begging for good. At the end of 1992, the capital was in turmoil. During one divination, Kiki looked out the window with a grave expression. In the near future, the world economy would see massive upheaval, and traditional industries would be hit hard. Dad, the energy in the sky is changing. We need to store more food and medicine. Kiki tugged on Gideon's sleeve. Without hesitation, Gideon set the Garrison family plan in motion. He built dozens of top-tier modern storage hubs across the country and poured massive resources into medical research. What looked crazy to outsiders proved rock solid. It let the Garrison family stand firm through the storm. The Garrison family was no longer just a wealthy clan. In the middle of that great upheaval, it provided jobs and supplies to society, becoming strongest pillar protecting Huaxiao's economy. On a bright and breezy afternoon, Kiki stood at the highest point of the residence. She clasped her hands, closed her eyes, and whispered. Her words fell like golden rain, drifting on the winds over the capital. Peace and prosperity for the nation. At those words, the air over the capital calmed. That invisible blessing of fortune earned the Garrison family recognition from highest ranks. As Gu Jinting watched his daughter's back, he knew this child had gone far beyond the world of the rich. She was the guardian of this land, and all he could do, stand behind her forever and give her a warm place to come home to. The Gu family's residence in the capital was lit up in celebration, a grand wedding 5 years overdue. Gu Xinting arranged it for Su Wan to give Chi-Chi a complete family. Every powerful family in the capital attended, and gifts filled a side hall. Gu Xinting wore a sharp black tailcoat, while Su Wan wore a pure white wedding gown. Chi-Chi changed into the prettiest bridesmaid dress, with a basket full of flower petals on her arm, holding her parents' hands. She walked down the red carpet. Daddy, Mommy, we have to stay together forever. Chi-Chi beamed brightly. Gu Xinting and Su Wan looked at each other lovingly, tears of happiness in their eyes. At the very moment the wedding vows began, a streak of golden light flashed through Chi-Chi's eyes. In a glimpse, she saw that on the lawn of the Gu family residence, besides herself, there was a little boy learning to walk. Oh, Chi-Chi let out a soft laugh and muttered, Dad, you'll have more talismans to draw later. Looks like I'm having a little brother to help share my homework. Gu Xinting and Su Wan froze, then both looked shocked and overjoyed. Wedding bells echoed, their chime lingering on. Above Gu Manor, a purple glow rose in the east, and lucky clouds hung unfading. This 5-year-old little celestial master, who came through the storms of the south, finally secured everlasting fortune for the whole family.